Thank you, Chair Meek,
Get 3 minutes. No, I'm just kidding.
Vice Chair Boquist, Senators Jama and Finley. My name, as I think you know, is Jeff Golden, and I'm a member of this committee and have the honor of representing District 3 in the state Senate in the Rogue Valley. The foundation of this bill, Senate Bill 502, for which I ask your favorable consideration, is a pair of stark facts. The first is that Oregon, along with the rest of the American West, is at ongoing risk of destruction from massive and intense wildfires. And if climatologists and forest scientists are right, it will be for many, many years to come. We are in the midst of a grim reality that began years ago in Southern California and has moved relentlessly northward through Central and Northern California, and in 2020 thrust into Oregon as far north as the Santiam Canyon. The list of partially and completely destroyed communities grows longer every year. On it are cities in my district and increasingly in some of yours. Those that have escaped the flames are increasingly engulfed by toxic smoke for days or weeks at a time. Beyond the suffering of Oregon families, which I could describe for the rest of our meeting, the damage to infrastructure and community life is beyond imagination. The total quantifiable cost of every severe wildfire season to our state now runs into the billions of dollars, and without a robust, comprehensive wildfire program, we know there will be more of these seasons. That's number one. Fact number two is that the robust, comprehensive wildfire program I mentioned, and that we launched with Senate Bill 762 in 2021, was entirely paid for by the State General Fund. The same is true for the coming biennium. We haven't identified another funding source, and it is abundantly clear that the General Fund can't continue to shoulder this burden. The fact is that as we sit here today, we don't have a path for protecting the Oregon communities from devastating, monumentally expensive wildfire going forward. This bill would create that path. Senate Bill 502 proposes to use about 1/3 of the pending income tax kicker to effectively protect Oregon communities permanently, or as close to permanently as anything we do can get. I want to lay out a little speculative math, and it's a little different from what we just heard from Mr. Olenek. I asked for some estimates earlier in the session about this, about what a $1,000 check, how much of the kicker that would take. And I'm going to use numbers based on that. They may need adjustment. The intention in this bill is to take 1/3 of the kicker for the wildfire purpose I'm about to describe. But based on the numbers that I had before, here's the math. The personal income tax kicker is now estimated at $5.1 billion. I think I heard a little different a moment ago. As written, Senate Bill 502 would send a $1,000 check to every eligible Oregon taxpayer. But since the new revenue forecast came out, I'd be interested in amending that to $1,500 per taxpayer. Those kicker checks would spend around $3.4 billion of the total, about 2/3 of the total, in refunds to taxpayers, leaving $1.7 billion, that's my target number, for a permanent wildfire programs trust fund. The principal of that fund, the roughly $1.7 billion we put into it, would not be spent. We would fund our wildfire programs with the investment interest that that fund earns every year. An annual return on investment of 7% on $1.7 billion would yield about $120 million each year for wildfire programs. A 6% return would yield a little more than $100 million per year. As it happens, that's almost exactly what Senate Bill 762 invested in this biennium. And not coincidentally, we've had 2 mild and manageable wildfire seasons since we passed that bill. There are a lot of reasons for that. I don't think 762 is the whole reason, but it certainly helped. My rough estimate is that a solid, adequate wildfire program needs something like $130 to $150 million per year. But even if our wildfire programs trust fund yields less than that, we'd get by and we would take enormous pressure off the general fund. So bottom line, here's the offer. In return for foregoing about 1/3 of the projected kicker this one time and one time only, Oregon taxpayers will receive protection, not 100% guaranteed protection, that'd be a false promise, but competent, reliable, at-scale protection from wildfires that would very likely decimate communities, countless lives, and the quality of life of every Oregonian who likes to breathe, protection lasting for decades to come. You'll notice that the bill as written calls for checks of equal amounts to all eligible Oregon taxpayers. To be candid, that part is a separate and obviously controversial conversation. I favor it because it's a tiny step towards tempering the staggering income gap at the root of so many problems in Oregon and across the country. But I don't want to take my eye off the ball. That is not what moved me to write this bill. The emergency purpose prompting this bill, one more time, is to protect our communities from catastrophic wildfire. In service of that goal, I'd accept an amendment that retains the kicker's current distribution method while separating out 1/3 of the total for the Permanent Wildfire Programs Trust Fund. Finally, Mr. Chair, a reality check. We're talking about the kicker here. I know the passion that many have for returning every single dollar to taxpayers, full stop. I'm getting the same email that you are on a couple of other bills from people warning us to keep our hands entirely off their kicker checks. This bill, 502, is different in that it simply redirects 1/3 of kicker dollars this year only. All the same, conventional wisdom would probably count the odds against it as insurmountable. I don't know about that. What I know is that most summers ahead will bring imminent threat of monumental devastation to our state. We don't have to imagine it any longer. We're seeing it again and again, a growing list of towns and cities that now reach deep into Oregon. Without adequate resources, we are guaranteed to see more. To be honest, I am not picky about where those adequate resources come from. If anyone has a better idea for protecting our state for many years to come than redirecting 1/3 of this year's kicker, please sign me up. I'll close, Mr. Chair, by asking us all to reflect on how we'll look back on this moment if we don't act in what science tells us is the extreme probability that we lose more homes, community, and lives to megafires because we didn't invest what it takes to prevent, reduce, and suppress them. The historically large kicker at hand gives us the unique opportunity to safeguard our state for decades. I ask you to look behind the political landmines and conventional wisdom with me to seize it. Thank you very much for the time to present, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Golden. Any questions?